Send lawyers, guns, and money.
Yet Morrison's defiant attempts to break down the boundaries of conformity, fueled by his incessant intake of alcohol and narcotics, was about to irreversibly change the band's fortunes. Arriving inebriated at a concert at the Dinner Key Auditorium in Miami on March 1st, 1969, the singer's wild and unrestrained performance saw the Doors targeted by conservative society and the state, and accusations of drunken misconduct, violence, and indecent exposure led to a warrant being issued for the arrest of James Douglas Morrison.
Morrison grew to have a tremendous amount of frustration and contempt for his fans because, in his view, they didn't want the shaman. They just wanted the body. They were only interested in one thing, and it just made him really enraged. He constantly talked about it. So when I heard that he had, whipped out his junk in Florida, I thought, well, sure, of course. This is what he thought they wanted. And actually, he was throwing it in their faces. So it turned out his junk was the least interesting thing about him.
In April, Morrison surrendered to the FBI and was released on $5,000 bail. This in turn began a protracted court case that targeted the singer as a chaotic symbol of the counterculture, and the surrounding campaign to punish Morrison won favor from high-profile conservatives, including newly elected President Richard Nixon.
I think Jim Morrison and the Doors got into trouble because of what happened at their Miami concert for a few reasons, but maybe something that people don't realize, especially now because that kind of behavior on stage has become more prevalent in our times, is first of all, in the context of his time, it was more shocking than it is now. If, as some people have said, the establishment were really looking for targets, and I believe they were at that time, Jim Morrison made a great one because he had, to be honest, made himself a target by what he did in Miami, whether he exposed himself or not, but also because he was so well known at that point and the Doors were so well known. That's what I think was really at the heart of Jim Morrison. It wasn't because he exposed himself on stage. I mean, and if he did, hardly anybody would have seen it anyway. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It was really trying to put a nail in the coffin of the counterculture, if that was even possible, which it wasn't. So the whole thing was a ridiculous tragedy, in my view.
I think he knew from the first that he was doomed. We talked about it a little, obviously, when we were, alone together, and we discussed it quite a bit, and he just said, they're out to hang me. But he knew from the first that he was not going to get through it. Nobody here gets out alive. And I think what he had resolved in his head was that A, nobody was going to see how upset he was, and B, he was going to try to do it as much as possible on his own terms. He did not want not to testify, even though his lawyer was very much against it, as I understand. He seemed to feel that this would be the only chance he was going to get to be able to explain to people, even though he knew they weren't going to understand a word of what he was saying, about himself, about the counterculture, about what he was doing as an artist, about his background, about all these things.
While Morrison struggled through the court cases and the surrounding media circus, the band's career was effectively put on hold.
I want to tell you about Texas radio and the big beat. Comes out of the Virginia swamps, cool and slow with plenty of precision, and a backbeat narrow and hard to master. Some call it heavenly in its brilliance, others mean and rueful of the Western dream. I love the friends I have gathered together in this thin route. We have constructed pyramids in honor of our escaping. This is the land where the Pharaoh died. The Negroes in the forest, brightly feathered, they are saying, forget the night, live with us about Texas radio and the big beat. Soft-driven, slow and mad like some new language. Now listen to this, I'll tell you about Texas. I'll tell you about Texas radio. I'll tell you about the hopeless night, wander in the western dream. Tell you about the maiden with wrought iron soul.
And you bet Jim was scared, man. We were all scared for him.
Jim was being railroaded. I mean, they couldn't even present evidence at the trial.
Miami was the first gig of a major tour. We had never done a major tour. We always played maybe 5 nights if we'd play that much. We'd go out for weekends and play 3, 4, 5 gigs at the most. We had 20 gigs booked, man. Cincinnati, St. Louis, Cleveland, all those kind of cities, man. We were just going to go out and do a national tour. We got banned in every single place, man.
After Miami, it changed. Jim wanted, I think, to focus his attention and his career in another direction toward poetry and film. And the leather pants went into the closet. And he started wearing those stovepipe pants, the railroad pants, and loose-fitting shirts worn on the outside of his belt. But I kind of have a personal feeling that, or a theory that what he was doing was deliberately changing his physical image, growing a beard, gaining weight, wearing sunglasses more, although he'd worn them earlier as well. And when he did a public television special soon after Miami, what he did was read his poetry. I think it was a very deliberate attempt on his part to change his visual image and to use that as a vehicle by which he could turn the direction of his career as well.
Send lawyers, guns, and money.